Hello and welcome back to Heart of the Holte. We've got the second episode of the exclusive Andy Gray interview series coming for you guys. This is it. You guys really enjoyed the first one. It's been a bit of a slow burner, but I think now that you guys know that it's about, hopefully this and the subsequent episodes will pick up a little bit of steam. This is a fantastic episode. Andy Gray talks about what it's like playing in the derby, his opinions on Ron Saunders and becoming a much more physical and aggressive player and how we needed to do that in England. Again, it's another fantastic episode. If you guys enjoyed the last one and if you enjoy this one, make sure you hit a like, comment your thoughts below on Andy Gray. It'd be great to actually have him on the channel and Dan and I get to speak to him as well. That'd be fantastic. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did editing it.
Ron Saunders was a man who portrayed a hard image. He was a hard man and he wanted everyone to know it. I thought he was a pussycat at times. I thought he played the role of the hard man very well, but once or twice when tested showed that he wasn't quite as hard as he would like everyone to believe. But it suited Ron to be like that, and for 2 years I got on well with him. He taught me a lot. He was a centre forward himself. He taught me to, I was going to say he taught me to be aggressive, but people who know me will say that that's not possible, that I couldn't have been taught to be any more aggressive than I was. But he taught me little tricks of the trade. I remember my first local derby, a lad called Joe Gallagher was playing centre-back for Birmingham. And we were just trotting back down the pitch. The ball was about 70 yards away. And I just glanced at Joe over my right shoulder and saw this fist coming flying at my face. And he landed me one right in the chin, and down I went. Half with shock as much as with anything. Got up, gave my head a little shake, cleared it a little bit, and I thought, what the hell was that all about? I'd never come across anything like this in my life. And I looked over at the dugout, much in shock, and Ron Saunders was there. And he's standing up, and he saw it. And he's standing there, and he's making this gesture with his elbow, saying to me, give him one next time you get a chance. Well, I hadn't done that to anyone in my life before. I hadn't needed to. And I certainly, I didn't need to start then. I always thought the best way of getting people back was to stick one in the net, and that's exactly what I did in the game. And that was my way of exacting revenge. But he taught me how to look after myself. He taught me the role of a centre forward. And the relationship with Ron was a good one for, well, quite a few years, well, a number of years. Certainly for 2.5 years it was a good one. And then almost overnight he, and I say he because it was him, and no matter what anyone says, and it was him who destroyed my respect for him. And I'm a type of guy who, if I don't respect the person I'm working with or the person who manages me, then I would rather not be there. People wouldn't believe the injections, the painkillers, the amount of times I pulled out of Scotland squads because Ron Saunders wanted me to. And when you do these sort of things for a man and he turns round and calls you a cheat, then something goes, you lose something. And I lost all respect for him. A couple of examples. I remember many times I was playing for Scotland, I'd been selected to play for Scotland, and Ron Saunders hated stars. He wanted 11 good players who all got an equal share of the limelight, and that was his ideal team. What he doesn't realise is if a team's successful, as Villa were, second season I was there, then people become stars. Invariably goal scorers, for instance, will become stars because those type of players hog the headlines, whether anybody likes that or not, whether Joe Bloggs is doing great stuff on the left wing or so-and-so at centre-back is playing out his skin. It doesn't matter. Those are not the people who make the headlines. So if your team's successful, then they make headlines. Like Andy Coles of this world made all the headlines when he was scoring goals. Strikers make headlines. So I made headlines and he didn't like it. And it didn't fit in with his image. And one day I'd played badly and I was selected for a Scotland squad. And he came to me on the Saturday after the game, straight after the game, sitting in the dressing room, and he says, I think you should pull out the Scotland squad. I says, well, why? And he says, because you didn't play very well today. I says, I know. I said, I just had a bad game. He says, no, but if you pull out the Scotland squad, I can work with you in the week and we can rest you and you'll be ready and better. And because I was so young and wanted to please my manager and my club. I pulled out. They made up some excuse that I picked up a knock, and I pulled out. I remember one year, at the end of the year, Scotland were going on a away trip to Brazil, South America somewhere, and I'd been selected for the squad. And in the last game of the season, he came to me and said again, I don't think you should go. I think you've had such a tough, hard season. You've been so successful. You could do with resting for a couple of months and soaking up some sun and not going and playing more football. And I was thinking, yeah, well, do you think so? I said, but I'm in the squad. What do I do? He says, well, we played West Brom last game of the season. I'll never forget it. Played West Brom last game of the season. And I needed a hat-trick to tie Malcolm McDonald as the top goal scorer. And I got a hat-trick in the first hour of the game. But the plan was I was to come off with 10 minutes to go. And coming off injured with 10 minutes to go. So I limped off with 10 minutes to go. I could have become the outright top goal scorer, but it didn't matter to him. And he pulled me off with 10 minutes to go. And of course then he was able to say after the game, Andy's got a bad ankle, it needs rested. He's been playing with it for 2 or 3 months now, and it needs rested. So we're pulling him out the squad. So again I missed 6, 7, 8 caps by that. We went to play Port Vale in an FA Cup another day. And these are just some of the things that I think people should know about what I did for Ron Saunders. And I had a terrible ankle injury. My ankle had been up, I missed the game before. It was big, it was swollen, it was painful. And he came to me and he says, how are you? I says, I just can't move it. I said, I can't play. He says, we need you to play, we need you. I said, but it's only, to his greatest respect, it's only Port Vale, boss. We should be able to beat them. It's not the point, He said, if I put a team sheet in and your name's not on it, he said, they'll get such a lift. He said, they might just cause a surprise. He says, but if I put the team sheet in and your name's on it, he says, their heads will drop. And that'll be worth a goal start to us. And I said, but even if I can't play, he said, even if you can't play, just stand there. And this sounds incredible, but this is a true story. So the physio strapped my ankle strapped it so tight that it couldn't move an inch in any direction. It was rigid. And I went out, and I was going to say I played. I went out and went through the motions for 45 minutes. We were winning 3-0 at half-time. And he took me off. And I missed the next 8 weeks, when I would have been back within 10 days had I not played that game. It put me back 8 weeks. We played in the Cup semi-final against Queen's Park Rangers. It was a replay. It was a big game I wanted to play. I had a terrible groin problem, and it was a muddy pitch. In fact, it was the first leg. It wasn't a replay. It was the first leg at Loftus Road. Muddy pitch. So if you've got a bad groin and you play in a muddy pitch, you damage it. So he got the doc to come in half an hour before the game, and the doc's just stuck an injection, big needle, straight into my stomach, and injected me with cortisone and painkiller. And I went out and I played, and I got through the game all right. And unfortunately that injury cleared. I've had injections in my knee, straight into the knee joint, which you should never do. I've had injections in my thigh. I had injections in my ankle. And I don't think there's many places that I didn't have injections to play, because yes, I wanted to play, and Ron Saunders will come back and say probably that I wanted to play anyway, and of course I did. Any professional worth his salt wants to play, but he wanted me to play, and I played much for him than for the club and for the supporters than myself. And there was no advantage for me to play half a game and then miss 8 weeks. That didn't make sense. And the reason it came to a head with Ron Saunders was we were in Europe and we were playing Barcelona. We drew Barcelona, and I missed the first leg. It was 2-2 at Villa Park. Tremendous game, great atmosphere. They were a good side. It was the Cruyff era, and a good side. But we still thought that we had a chance. I was still hopeful of playing in the return leg, so we thought, yeah, that might be the thing. With Andy back in the side, we might just surprise him over there. So on the Sunday, normally you played on the Saturday and you flew out on the Sunday. I think we were actually flying out Monday morning. And I missed the Saturday game before it. I had a thigh strain, bad one, as it turned out to be. And Ron Saunders came up to me and said, "How do you feel on the Sunday?" And I said, "Well, in all honesty, boss, I'm still a bit sore and it's still a bit tight. But, you know, when we get over there, it's warm, 3 more days, I might just make it." He said, "That's not what I'm asking." I said, "Well, what are you asking?" He said, if you don't tell me you're fit now, I'm not taking you." And I looked at him and I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. You're not taking me. What? He says, "I need you to tell me now you're going to be fit." I said, "I can't." I said, "I just can't." I said, "Hopefully I will be, but I can't tell you now." I said, "If you're asking me could I play today, Sunday, 3 days before the game, I would have to say no." I said, "That's all I want to know. You're not going." And that was it. We lost 2-1 in a very tight game. And I just might have made a difference. And I just might have played. But on the way back, he was talking to some press guys. Unfortunately for him, one of the press lads I knew very, very well. And they were asking him about why I wasn't there. The natural question, of course, you can imagine what pressmen were looking at. They were saying, "Well, where's Andy? Why is he not here? You know, why didn't you give him a few days?" And he came out with this statement to these lads that I had... Andy Gray has cheated not only himself, he's cheated me, Aston Villa, and the Aston Villa supporters. And the story got back to me. And I went straight into Ron Saunders. And I said to him, "I know what you said." And he didn't deny it. He didn't try and waffle his way out of it. To his credit, he didn't deny it. He said, "Well, that's what I felt." And I said, "After all I've done for you," I said, you have a cheek to say that about me." I said, "There are many players you probably could have said it about." I said, "But surely not me." I said, "As far as you and I are concerned, I never want to play for you again. And the sooner you put me up for sale, the better." And then, of course, that was the start of, well, what could only be described as an unbelievable era in Villa history. It was quite amazing what went next. Played, you see, and he felt that I'd cheated everybody because I said I was unfit on the Sunday instead of saying I was fit on the Sunday when I wasn't. And the game was 3 days later. And I most probably would have been fit to play. And we most probably might have won the match. In the mid-70s, and people talk about hard men, there were a few hard men around, there's no doubt about that. I think probably more than are playing now. And they could get away with it, and they would let you know. I knew when I went out on a Saturday, within 10 minutes, that any ball played up to me in the halfway line, I'd be flat on my back, picking myself off the turf, and so would the centre-half, dusting me down, saying, "Sorry, Andy." But there'll be more where that came from. It was a welcome to the game tackle, as it was called. And it's something that doesn't happen a lot now, but in my day then, in the mid-70s, it happened an awful lot. And you really had to stand up and be counted, or you went under. It was simple as that. There was a lad playing for Birmingham called Kenny Burns, another Scot, tough, uncompromising, a face you didn't really want to look at too often or for too long. I mean, he would frighten people just looking at him. And smashing lad, and later we became good pals, actually, Kenny and I. And one of those faces that you'd put his picture on the mantelpiece if you wanted to keep the kids away from the fire. You know, it was like that. That's how frightening he was. And I remember my first confrontation with him, and he did what I expected. He gave me a right whack. So 5 minutes later, I returned the compliment. "Have a bit of that, Kenny." And the shock on his face, he couldn't believe it. He'd never had this before. And I just turned to him and says, "Listen, Kenny, there's one or two things can happen. You can kick me, and I'll kick you back all day. Simple as that. Or you can just get on with the game and let's play and accept that you're not going to kick me and I won't kick you. So you make the decision." And from that day on, Kenny Burns and I we competed against each other. There's no doubt about that. We never pulled out of tackles, but we didn't go around kicking each other. There was a mutual respect there. And that's what I mean about you had to stand up and be counted. And that happened quite a lot. People like Norman Hunter were hard as nails. I remember once miscontrolling a ball. I was playing for Scotland under-23s at Hampden against Leeds, a great Leeds side, and somebody knocked the ball up to me and I could hear these hooves rattling into the back of it. It was Norman, and I miscontrolled the ball, and as he was running in, it popped up in the air, went over his head, and because I was only 18 or 19, I spun quickly and got behind him, and I was off towards the Leeds goal, having a shot at goal. And as I was trotting back, he went to me, "Do that again, son, and you'll be leaving this picture on a stretcher." I said, "But I didn't mean it, Norman. I miscontrolled it, honestly. I didn't do it deliberately." Because I was a kid and his reputation preceded him, and he was a hard man. The difference between a hard man in today's game and a hard man in then is the hard men then could all play. They could all play football. They were all talented players, and I'm not so sure that the so-called hard men of the 90s could have lived with the hard men of the 70s that I encountered, the Tommy Smiths, if you like. They were all good. Look at Dave Mackay. I think of Dave Mackay, and he just frightened me to look at him. Pictures of him, and I think this guy was regarded as tough as nails, and yet great ability. Now that's the difference between the hard men of the 70s and the hard men of the 90s, I think. But there were plenty of them around, and it was a case of don't ever let them feel that they were on top of you, otherwise they dominated you. I remember John Dean, who played at Villa with me, was frightened to death of Kenny Burns, and Kenny knew it. And every time Kenny played against John Dean, you would bet your life John Dean wouldn't have a kick. Now that happens. It's like a story I told with the two centre-backs at West Brom, John Weil and Alistair Robertson. I knew they didn't like playing against me, and I always played well against them, and they always played badly against me. And it was the same with John Dean and Kenny Burns. Kenny always knew he could intimidate him and get away with it and make his job easier. So it was a case of stand up and be counted, and I was all for standing up and being counted. Well, the summer of '76 was a strange one for me in many ways. I stayed in Birmingham. Normally I would have gone home to Glasgow and spent some time with my mum, but I decided to stay in Birmingham because I had my brother and I had Rab, my best mate, and we had a couple of mates who worked were building a bus station over in Wolverhampton, and we were doing nothing, the three of us, except messing about. So I actually did some labouring that summer. It sounds incredible what I did. The three of us, we used to get up at 6 or 7 in the morning and go out my house, drive to Wolverhampton, do some hod carrying. I carried bricks up and down a ladder and did some labouring. Enjoyed it. It was keeping me fit. It was physically demanding. It kept us off the streets, if you like. And we did that for about a couple of months, and then of course it was back to pre-season training. And I don't think there was nothing happened in pre-season that was going to suggest to me that I was going to have the season that I had. I thought the Villa team was a good one, and I really thought we had a nice blend of youth and experience, with great talent, a good team spirit, only beaten by the wonderful Everton side I played in the mid-80s. And off we went. But game one, I think, West Ham at home, beautiful, glorious August day, sun was shining, and we got off to a flyer, 4-0. I got 2. It snowballed from there. Through September, I think I got 12 goals in about 8 games in September, 2 for my country, scored my first goals for my country that September, 2 of them against Finland at Hampden, and a 6-0 victory. One of them was eventually goal of the season in Scotland, and I didn't get many goals of the season. I had more scuffs than anything. And we really did, once we'd beaten West Ham, believe that, and that early, that we were good enough to do something that year. And the results kept coming. We did quite well in the League Cup to start with. We kept winning matches in that, and it's amazing how when you're in a cup like the League Cup, which spread over quite a period of time from October or something to March, when the cup final is, how you just nibble away at it, and before you know it, you're doing well. And we were doing well in the League Cup, and we got a big test. I think was in the November. We played really well, top of the league, never out the top 4, I don't think, even from the start. And the champions, I think, arrived at Villa Park in the shape of Liverpool, with the lot, Emlyn Hughes, Phil Thompson's, all the stars. All the stars were there, on show. It's a night that will live for all who saw it, very much in Villa's history. Wednesday evening, and the scoreline at half-time read Aston Villa 5, Liverpool 1. And it was amazing, because we had 5 shots at goal that night in the first half, and we scored 5 goals. Liverpool had 1, they scored 1, and everyone could have gone home at half time. It was just I've never played in a game like it since or before that. I'd never sampled what it was like to have 5 chances to score all 5. I got 2 headers, actually. What else would I get? I got 2 headers. John Dean and got 2, and Brian Little got 1. It was at the time when he was playing the 3 of us, and we really were destroying most teams. And it was a very strange half time, because what can you say as a manager? Your team are 5-1 up against Liverpool, and I think Ron Saunders must have been just saying, well, just protect what you have. Don't be looking for any more. And I don't think we'd any intention of looking for any more. I don't think we could believe it sitting in the dressing room. But I think if we were shocked, there was a dressing room across the corridor with Liverpool players in it. It must have been doubly shocked. Needless to say, the second half just drifted away. Who cared? I mean, no one on the ground could have cared whether the referee blew after 46 minutes. But it went to 90 minutes. There were no more goals. And I think that was the night we more or less announced that we were serious contenders for the championship that year. We all felt good about it. But what went against us a little was we were too good. And I know that sounds crazy. We were too good because we got involved in an FA Cup run as well. We got to the 6th round of the FA Cup, only lost at Old Trafford to Manchester United, I think, 2-1. Again, another game I missed through injury, I hasten to add. And being involved in 2 long cup runs and a league race against, very good team, particularly Liverpool, we found it hard, and I found it hard because I picked up a bad ankle injury at Derby, and people who played at the baseball ground in those days will know what I'm talking about when I say it was probably the worst pitch in the country. It was terrible. I just jumped for a ball, down I came, over I went on a rut, and my ankle was gone. And this was tailing off near the end of the season, but it just put a little halt on our challenge for the title. We ended up finishing 4th in the league, which we all thought was very respectable. A team had just been promoted the season before, hadn't won an away game. We suddenly were 4th in the division. We were in the final of the League Cup. We got to the 6th round of the FA Cup. So it was an unbelievable season. I, by Christmas, had scored 20 goals. 20 plus goals, I think. But then the season began to tail off a little. Not only for me, but I think for the club as well. I suddenly found goals very hard to come by from about mid-January. And got about 1 goal, I think, in 13 or 14 games. It was the worst spell that I'd ever had as a footballer. And it's weird, if you have never suffered a spell like that, it's often difficult to know what to do to get out of it. And all I thought of doing was just keep putting yourself in positions, and chances will come. Eventually, they did come late on in the season. But that spell from January to maybe March, I didn't not play well, but I didn't score enough goals. And we had this incredible League Cup semi-final with Queen's Park Rangers. Quite an unbelievable tie. The 2-legged affair, it was 0-0 down at Loftus Road, and we came to Villa Park reasonably confident we could beat Queen's Park Rangers, who were a good side then. I'm talking about the Dave Thomases, the Jerry Francises, the people who played, the Dave Webb, Frank McClintock, Phil Parkes in goal. This was a good side. And they arrived at Villa Park on Wednesday night, and it was one of the best games I've ever played in my life. The place was packed again. It finished 2-2. John Buddish saved a penalty. I thought that I'd scored the winning goal in extra time. I ran from near the halfway line, which was in itself a novelty, and smashed in a right footer from about 20 yards, which was even more of a surprise. Continued my run to the Holte end, was halfway up the Holte end before I turned round and saw the referee pointing to an offside decision that had taken place about 4 minutes earlier. So I was disappointed I hadn't scored the winning goal, but it was quite an incredible night of football. Now, there was a young lad, I should have said a young lad, what am I saying? There was a wily old campaigner who was chairman of QPR called Jim Gregory at the time. And of course, there was a toss of the coin straight after the game as to where the next game would be played. Would it be in the Midlands or would it be in London on a neutral ground? So little Jim tosses the coin, dives on it, heads, that's it, it's Highbury. Doug Ellis, well, okay, or whoever was our chairman, it might have been Ron Bendel, might have been the Bendels at the time. Oh well, fine, that's okay, if it's the heads, if Jim says it's heads, okay. Off we were, no chance. Everyone thought, that's it, QPR will win the game. it was a game that I played out my skin. I probably played the best game for Villa that I played and didn't get a goal. We won the game 3-0 and Brian Little got a hat-trick. And the joy that night, I stayed in London. I told you I liked and I enjoyed life. I stayed in London and celebrated the first major cup final in England and my first full season, and I stayed and celebrated. But it was a magnificent performance. I think Willie Ormond, who was then the Scotland manager, came to watch the game and described it as one of the best team performances he had ever seen. It was that good, and I played out my skin. I played really, really well, and that was us through to the first major final, which really turned in to one of the big disappointments of my career. It was a poor cup final. We played Everton, who I think were petrified of us. I mean petrified. And it's just as well for Everton that the back pass law wasn't in place then, because they must have passed the ball back to the goalkeeper in 90 minutes 60 times. They were so frightened of us. They were so negative. They played for and got a 0-0. I didn't want to go up. Princess Anne was there. I didn't want to go up the steps. I'd always, as a kid, I'd always said, if I go up those steps at Wembley, I want to be picking up a winner's medal. I never want to go up there picking up anything else, and I certainly don't want to go up there picking up nothing. But as protocol would have it, we have to go up and shake hands with the royal personage and go back down the other side. So they managed to persuade me to go up. I was so disappointed at 0-0, really disappointed on the pitch, didn't want to go up. I went up, shook hands with Princess Anne and went back down, and Ron Saunders came again and said, on you go. I said, go what? She said, just, and the teams had went on a lap of honour, and I said, are you crazy? He says, why are you not going? I said, I'm not going. He says, why are you not going? I said, because I've not won anything. You do a lap of honour when you win something. We've not won anything. This game isn't finished. The last thing I'm going to do is walk around that pitch in a lap of honour. And I buzzed off to the dressing room, let the rest of them get on with it. And he couldn't understand that either, but it's something that I felt very strongly about. The first replay, which took place at Hillsborough, they got a little bit more adventurous, Everton, and it was another poor game. It finished 1-1, and in those days there were no penalty shootouts, even for cup finals. So it went to a third game, which was to take place at Old Trafford, and in between the first replay and the second replay came my bad ankle injury, Derby. And I was sat on the touchline at Old Trafford, and quite an incredible game, a game we were losing until Chris Nicol, I mean, I say the name Chris Nicol and I can't believe I'm about to tell you of the goal that big Chris scored. He picked up the ball about 45 yards from goal, right out on the right touchline, turned inside on his left foot, and from fully 40 yards hit this exocet past David Lawson, who I think was taken by surprise more than anything. I think 9 times out of 10 he would have saved it, and it flew into the corner, and Villa were off. Brian Little got 2, got another one. Full credit to Everton, they came flying back, and I think Bob Latchford got the equaliser, or Mick Lyons. It was one of those two. They both get goals that night, but I'm not sure which order they came in. But both Latchford and Lyons scored. The game went into extra time, and Brian Little pinched as a winner, and we won the game 3-2. And I enjoyed the night. I felt I had played my part. I didn't feel out of it. We were on the bus home. I enjoyed the champagne that flowed. I enjoyed the party. Needless to say, we ended up in a nightclub in Birmingham later that night, celebrating to the early hours. And although I didn't play in that game, I had enjoyed it. And I had scored, as I say, I had finished joint top goal scorer with Malcolm. I went on to do that, recovered from my ankle injury, and in the last month of the season finished on a high. We got to 4th. I had scored 30 goals I think that season, League and Cup. And then the PFA Awards were announced, are going to be announced, unofficially announced to me, because what happened was the PFA Awards were always given the day after the League Cup final, and it was then that I was injured. I had a bad ankle, and Ron Saunders came to me and said, you can't go to the PFA Awards. And I said, why? He said, because you got a bad ankle and you need treatment. I said, but hold on a minute, boss, the awards are in the middle of the night. The awards are at 8 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. I'll be back by midnight. says, I'm not letting you go. So Derek Dugan, who was head of the PFA at the time, was on the phone all Sunday to Ron Saunders and I. He said to me, come on. I said, listen, I'll come. I said, but I can't. I'm banned from coming. He said, and then the truth came out. He says, to be honest with you, I knew I'd won one. I didn't know about the other. He said, you've won both awards. He says, and I went, what? He says, you've won both awards. I said, but it doesn't matter, Derek. I said, you've got to clear it with the boss. This was typical of me. I should have just said, stuff it, I'm going. I wish now, in hindsight, I look back all these years, and one of my big regrets about that night is that I didn't turn to Ron Saunders and say, I don't care what you say. This is my big night. I'm going down to London to pick up my awards, and I'm coming straight back. Derek Dugan said he'd put on a chauffeured car that would pick me up outside my house, that would drive me to the hotel in London. They would virtually carry me onto stage if that's what Ron Saunders wanted. They'd carry me back to the car, drive me, put me to bed, and I'd be ready for treatment the next day. He said, we'll do all that for Andy, please let him come. And Ron Saunders said, no, he can't go. So then Derek got back on the phone to me, and he says, Andy, you can imagine what the night's going to be like if we haven't got a recipient. And I went, well, what are you suggesting, Derek? And he says, I'd like you to give one of the awards back. He says, but if you do, you can't tell anybody that you won it. He says, the Young Player of the Year award. So we can give it to who came second. I think it was Peter Barnes. And for a second, there was a pregnant pause, and I almost said okay. And 9 times out of 10, Andy Gray would have said okay. Just to let them have somebody there. Just to be Mr. Nice Guy, if you like, in that respect. And I turned round, and I don't know why, and I don't know to this day why I said it. I said no. I said, if I've won both, I want both. And it's only now, when that can't be done anymore, when the rules were changed the next year to stop anybody winning both, that I realised that I'm the only player who will ever have won the Young Player of the Year and the Players Player of the Year in the same season. And it feels good. It feels good to know that. But what they had to do then, because I couldn't go, suddenly all these television trucks and 60-foot aerials started arriving in my front garden, which wasn't the biggest front garden in the world. And they did a live link from my house to London. It wasn't the same. The trophy was at my house, and Chris Nicholl presented me with the big award, PFA Player of the Year. And someone, I think Peter Barnes, who was second, received it for me, the Young Player of the Year, on my behalf in London. But it's my one big regret that I didn't tell Ron Saunders to shove it and just go down and pick up my award. And it was only years later, when I went myself as a guest without winning anything, that I realised what I'd missed. To be voted the best by your peers is something special. Awards are nice, and winning medals are nice, and when you get voted the Player of the Year by the press, it's nice. But the greatest accolade any professional can ever have in any walk of life is if your peers vote you the best. And they bestowed that honour on me in 1977, and it's without doubt one of the highlights, if not the highlight.